to another Translator Insider. We continue this 2023 and we start talking business. So today we are exploring resources. As translators, it is very important that we have our resources because, of course, and as you know, we are not dictionaries, and sometimes we are working in a project and sometimes come up that we don't know, and we need to do our research. But we need to be careful where we do that research, and we need to be careful with the resources that we choose. And today we are going to talk about that. So stick around for another Translator Insider. And let's talk about resources. We know that that is a very important part of our job, and we do need to have very good resources when we do our projects because obviously we are not dictionaries and we need to know sometimes terms that come up that we don't know. And if the client doesn't have a glossary, sometimes companies do that and provide us that. But if your client does not have a glossary, or they cannot really explain what the term is, you need to research and you need to find a good translation. Even if your client explained to you, we obviously will explain that to you in most probably English, and obviously you will need to know the right translation into the other language that you use. So it is important that we know our resources. And obviously when we talk about certain areas, and I'm talking about, for example, legal terms, financial terms, things like that, of very, very specific fields and industries, it is important that we actually have resources that come from that industry. And we need to know where those resources come from. We have those more general resources, like, for example, pros.com, where we can actually do a term search and we can find several terms that we might be looking for. Sometimes we will see that the answers provided by other colleagues are actually provided by colleagues that work in that field. So it is very important to ascertain that, because obviously a colleague that is not in that field may actually provide a good answer and the right answer, but is an assurance that you will that you are getting the right answer and the right option for that specific term if you ask and the person that is answering you that question is someone that works in that particular field, because obviously it will be someone that works with those words and work in that field and obviously have a very deep knowledge about the terminology used in that field. So it is important for you to do that when you search in a more specific, or in, should I say, a more broader forum, like, for example, pros.com, or a translators forum, or even sometimes social media groups like Facebook groups and other groups like that. It is important that you ascertain if the person that is answering you, it is someone that work in that field. For example, if you working for or you're looking for a legal term, it would be important to ascertain if that person, for example, is a lawyer that also works as a translator, or is someone that has a law degree or works in the legal field. That, for example, would be a very, very valuable tool to have, knowing what actually is the specialization that that person works with. But obviously, not only this type of inquiry works, but there is websites with glossaries, with plenty of resources that we can use, and we should be aware of that. For example, when I work, and it's not only for the legal field, this website is actually for a wide range of subjects, and it is a European Union website. It's a terminology website for the European Union. So if you work with European languages, like I do with European Portuguese, it is a very useful tool. It is IATE. We usually call it IATE, and it is a very important tool. I'll leave the link below so you can actually access and see. It's free. You can, as in any other tool, similar tool, you just do your term search and you will see a wide range of answers and the field or the application that those answers were applied to, so you can actually see if it would be a good match for what you actually doing. It is very good for legal translation, for legal terminology. There's finance. You can find all sorts of things there, and you can do the research, and it gives you a very good answer, because that is the terminology used by the European Union. So, for example, if you are working with a European language, that would be a nice tool to have. They have a wide range of languages, English, the European Union languages mostly, and you can do it in any directions. I've done it from English to Portuguese and vice versa. You can do it in any direction and a wide range of terminologies. Apart from that, every language, obviously, there is glossaries, and sometimes, for example, the country's law society or the law association or something, they sometimes have glossaries. That would be a good resource because it comes from a body within that industry. Your own association, your translators association, may have also some glossaries. Pros.com have some glossaries that have been published by some colleagues. So it is always important that when we look for our resources, we look for the source of those resources, and if they come from a reputable source, from someone or somebody that is in that particular field, because that guarantee us that those terms and those translations would have a higher probability of being correct, because we all know there is a lot of misinformation online, and there may be a lot of actually translations that may not be 100% correct. And we also know, I've been talking about this several times, there is the issue of localization. And for example, if you are looking, and this is very important, and if we talk about, or if we take the Portuguese as an example, for example, if you are looking for glossaries in Portuguese, you will find that most of them will be in Portuguese from Brazil. And please be aware, there is some terminology that are different between the countries, Portugal and Brazil. Some words that are used in Brazil are not used in Portugal, and vice versa. So if you are looking, if you work for Portugal and you work with the Portuguese, European Portuguese, I would recommend that you do not consider a glossary from Brazil. The reason is the Brazilian version, the Brazilian variant of Portuguese is somehow different, and there is a lot of words that can be different. And sometimes the same word may mean different things in both countries. So, and obviously, if you are going to use them in one country and then you use the same word in the other country, you may get in trouble because it might be a different thing. I take an example that I actually came to with a colleague of mine. She's Brazilian, and we had a meeting, we had an event, And I come to realize that, for example, the word that the Portuguese from Portugal use for a university degree, which is licenciatura, in Brazil is a totally different thing. In Brazil, the word that they use for a university degree, it's just like in English, and I have mentioned this before, the Portuguese from Brazil suffered a huge influence from the American English, and some words are direct translations from that, and this is one of the cases. The university degree per se in Brazil, it's called a bachelor, so it's like a bachelor degree, just like in English, and licenciatura, which is the name given to a university degree in Portugal, is a totally different thing. I came to know, and this colleague of mine explained to me that you get a licenciatura when you, for example, want to be a teacher, and then you get that licenciatura, which is another type of qualification on top of your degree that give you that authorize you to be a teacher. So it's a totally different thing. So let's imagine if you are looking for this and you find the word licenciatura, and for example you working for Portuguese in Brazil, and you look at the glossary from Portuguese from Portugal and you find the word licenciatura and then you apply it in Brazil, you will mislead your Brazilian audience, because they will think about what licenciatura means for them, which is a totally different thing that of what it means in Portugal. So we need also to be very aware of variants of the languages that we work with, because there might be very big differences between them. And I know in Portugal and Brazil these differences happen, and I just gave you a very simple example, but there is more. And we need to be aware of this, so our translation is always localized, is always culturally fit and obviously correct. So it is important that when we choose our resources, we choose carefully. We choose if the source of those resources are within the industry of the term we are looking for. It is very important that that happens. Then it is very important that we also know, because it may be from the right industry, it might come from an official body, but if it's from a country where there's another variant of the language spoken and there's differences between them, then there might be issues. So it's also important to see where geographically that resource comes from, and if it's adequate to your variant, adequate to what you do. It is important to have these resources. It is important to choose the correct ones for you, and this is what you should bear in mind. Localization, the industry that those resources are from, and obviously if it's a colleague answering, where that colleague is, because of also you have that issue with answers from colleagues. If you have, and given the example of Portuguese again, if you ask a question and you have a Brazilian colleague answering, of course the Brazilian colleague will answer in their variant, which is obviously correct for Brazil. But if you are working with Portugal, that may not be correct. So you also have to bear that in mind. And with everything that you do, you need to bear in mind localization and the field, the industry that you are working with, and be aware of other possible resources that may be out there that are not identified their source, that are not linked to an official body in that industry, and obviously may have some issues. Be aware of that. So for today, I hope you liked this very important insider. I hope it really gave you a little bit of a clue about resources and the importance of having good resources, because obviously something that is essential to all of us. and obviously all the things that you should bear in mind before you choose your resources. Again, I stress it is also very important that you do your own glossary, and you have that because if you have your own glossary where you already have the terminology that you research and that you have done previously, if it appears again, you don't need to do that research again. You already have it on your own glossary and you just need to search on your own glossary and find it there. So it is also very important that not only you have good resources, external resources, but you have your own internal resources, given your dictionaries and of course your own glossary. So this is what I wanted you to know for this week. But of course, if you have any questions about this or any other subject that we talk about in the Insider, please leave me a comment below and I'll be very happy to answer your queries. Or if you have a suggestion of something that you would like to see discussed in our Insider, please also give me your suggestion. I'll be very, very, very happy to consider it and do a future Insider about whatever you have to suggest. You know, please put a like in the video and subscribe the channel with a click on the bell so you get a notification of a new Insider every week. Before I go, I would like to thank you all for watching. See you next week. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.